Welcome in, everybody. Hope everyone's having a good day. Welcome in, Bobs. How are you doing tonight? And welcome to the very, very first Money Monday stream. This has been a long time in the works, and I'm very excited about it. And also, not a little nervous. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about budgeting, and we'll just give people a little bit of time to kind of come in. So how's everyone's day going? How's the beginning of your week going? Hopefully, thank you. Yeah, if you've ever thought about streaming in a suit, my recommendation is don't do it. We'll probably be losing articles of clothing as the stream goes on because I already feel it's gonna be a hot night here. Welcome in, Rage. Damien, what is going on? You got to build the trust with the audience, and when have you never been able to trust a man in a suit, right? So, I'm here from the government. I'm here to help. You're not kidding, Rage. I think we're talking about different kinds of hot, but it is fucking hot in here. So, welcome in, everybody. While people come in, I thought I would just talk for a minute on, what this is and what I'm doing, why I wanted to do this kind of stream. So this has been something that's been on my mind for quite a while, and I have to actually thank Rage. It was my appearance on her podcast talking about the bank fallout last month that kind of made me solidify these plans. I've seen a lot of, let's call it, financial misinformation out there from people posting on Twitter, a lot of streamers and content creators I see, a lot of people I know in my personal life, and also like the media. If you're not dealing with someone who's really like a financial reporter, they tend to get a lot of this stuff wrong. So what I wanted to do is kind of reach out and try and reach some people. I know the Twitter and content creator universe skews on the younger side, and try and catch people while you still have the most important asset that you will ever have in your life, which is time. Right now, as a young person, you can make moves that will set yourself up down the line. It requires some discipline and sacrifice, but really, you can't get that time back. I started saving for retirement later in life, and I kick myself every day because I had a lot of catching up to do, and I'm still not caught up to where I would be if I had done this, back when I was 20. So no matter where you are, it's never too late to start, but just know if you are on the younger side of things, take this information to heart, because time is something you can't get back, and it is your number one ally in all of this. Bank fallout was insane. You're listening in podcast style. Nice. Yeah, listening. So today's topic is going to be about budgeting. I have a short presentation to give. It's going to be about a half hour or so. We'll talk all about budgeting, and then we'll open it up for any questions you either have about the presentation and the topic today, or any other topics you might have. And I have some stuff to look at, some interesting scenarios I found online we can talk about. Yeah, we got a PowerPoint, Rage. We're fucking trucking. So I will apologize in advance. I am fighting a cold, as I mentioned to Bob's in the chat. So I have tea, I have water. If my voice is a little froggy, I do apologize. Yeah, we're going official with the PowerPoint. In fact, let me go ahead and make sure. Yeah, the PowerPoint. I think the PowerPoint's ready to go here. Let's pull it up, shall we? Thank you, Damien. One thing, while I am doing the presentation, I will not be super focused on chat, so I apologize. Maki will be here to kind of jot down questions people have and to kind of make sure that I don't miss anything. And I will, take breaks occasionally and catch up. But if you say something and I don't respond, don't feel insulted. We will get to you, I promise. So why don't we go ahead and get started? We'll go through the presentation and see where it leads. I bookmarked 2 hours for this stream, so it'll go till 8, and we'll see that after the presentation, it's all up to you guys, audience participation. I want this to be a conversation and not just a lecture. So we'll go as until 8 if we have content. If not, we'll cut it off a little early and I'll rest my voice. Save questions for the end of the presentation. Thank you, Bobs. Thank you. Bobs knows what's up. All right. Just check in on everything. Da, 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 da. All right, I think we're good. So let me get my. I don't do a lot of PowerPoint presentations at work, so this is kind of fun. It's like I've been waiting my whole life for this moment. All right, I'm gonna drop the music out. Actually, we could put on. All right, let me ask you guys what you prefer. We can put on some like chill lo-fi beats with no words if you prefer to have some kind of music in the background, or we can do it no music. What does chat think? What are you feeling today? You liked what was playing? The only problem is that playlist is only like 5 songs, so it's going to start repeating pretty quickly. But we can put on like some little like I have like some of those study music is good, but a little quieter, so you're the star. Okay, I like that plan. Let's see what we got here. We have let's put on like my study list here. It's like piano tracks and stuff. Hopefully, it won't be too mellow, but. Where intense studying. That's what we're going to be doing today, everyone. Intense fucking studying. Okay, let's bring this up. Is it even playing? I don't know. It's so mellow. Okay, we'll fade this in. There we go. Oh, this is intense. This is like we're going to have a serious conversation right now. Please take a seat over here. I have something we need to talk about. Okay, so again, I started this because I wanted to give something back to the community. I feel that there's a lot of people out there who are confused about finance, and it adds a lot of stress to their lives, and that it shouldn't be that way. Taking control of your finances and getting ahead of things will give you peace in that regard, and will help you at least understand your situation. I was guilty of this myself. Sticking your head in the sand, being an ostrich and not facing problems head on, and it's very easy to do with money. I used to leave bills unopened. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to look at it because it would remind me like, shit, I got to deal with this, and it became a problem. Before we get started, everyone, I'm going to read off a few disclaimers. I hate to have to do this, but unfortunately, in today's society, we gotta protect ourselves here. So bear with me a moment. Thank you for tuning into my live stream on personal finance. Before we begin, please note that the information provided in this live stream is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial advice or professional guidance. Personal finance is a complex and ever-changing subject, and individual circumstances may vary. I am not acting in the capacity of a certified financial advisor or professional, and the content shared in this live stream is based on my personal opinions, experience, and research. I strongly recommend consulting with a qualified financial professional or conducting your own research before making any financial decisions. While I strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, I do not guarantee the accuracy, completeness, or timeliness of the information presented in this live stream. The financial landscape can change rapidly, and it's important to verify any information with reliable sources. Furthermore, please note that any references to specific financial products, services, or companies in this live stream are for illustrative purposes only and should not be considered as endorsements. It's essential to conduct your own due diligence and consider your unique financial goals, risk tolerance, and financial situation before making any financial decisions. By watching this stream either live or as video on demand, you acknowledge and agree that the hosts and speakers are not responsible for any actions, decisions, or outcomes based on the information provided in this stream. You assume full responsibility for your financial decisions and should seek professional advice as needed. Remember, personal finance is a lifelong journey, and it's important to continuously educate yourself, seek professional advice, and make informed decisions based on your unique financial situation. Yeah, Maki, coming in here ruining the disclaimers. Come on. I'm just kidding. So there you go. Basically, don't just trust what anyone tells you. Verify. Trust but verify. How about that? And don't sue me. Okay. Maki is bursting in here on the scene. Thank you for being here, Maki. Let's all give a round of applause to Maki for modding on this probably one of the more important moments of my streaming career to date. So thank you so much, Maki, for making yourself available. A volunteer, and love to have him here. Bruce, I was not expecting you here. Happy early morning Tuesday to you, Bruce. Yeah, and Maki's going to be keeping everyone in order here. All right, so let's carry on. Most of you, I think everyone in the chat so far knows me, but for anyone who's watching who does not know me, who is Bytes and why should you listen to me on this topic? Well, first of all, you probably know me from my gaming streams. I'm a variety streamer here on Twitch, playing a lot of retro point-and-click adventures and also sim games and city builders and things like that. 8 bits, exactly. But more pertinent to today's discussion, I am a professional in the financial services industry and have been so for over 2 decades. I've held a variety of positions. I've seen things from a variety of different perspectives, and I've had the privilege of working with a lot of very, very smart people who have taught me pretty much everything I know as I've come up in the industry. And I do hold multiple US securities licenses, so I have been tested on this stuff and have to go to all kinds of fun seminars on compliance and regulatory stuff. So more importantly, I'm no stranger to personal financial hardship myself. I alluded to that a few minutes ago. I made a lot of really stupid decisions back when I was younger and probably set myself back quite an amount of time. I wound up accumulating tens of thousands of dollars of credit card debt. Just did not have any savings to my name, was living paycheck to paycheck, extremely stressed out about money. And it was only because of a few colleagues who kind of set me on the right path. And, I was fortunate enough to have jobs that were fairly well paying at the time. And I was able to claw myself out. It took a long time, took a lot of discipline, but it was some of these lessons that I'm going to be teaching throughout these streams that helped me out. And I hope that they can help you out, whether you're in that scenario or not. The ideal situation is not to get yourself in that scenario in the first place. But if you are, there are ways out. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so why are we starting with budgeting? I know this is a fascinating topic, right? I think most people would, rather start with something flashy like, Bitcoin. But basically, budgeting is the foundation of any strong financial plan. You can't really get anywhere else if you talk about accumulating savings, accumulating investments. You can't get there without a budget. You need the budget to be your roadmap. Trying to reach your financial goals without a budget is difficult, if not impossible. Tracking your expenses, like tracking your calories, can be eye-opening. This is an analogy I'm going to keep coming back to because I find financial budgeting is very, very similar to dieting. And a few years back when I was really trying to take control of my nutrition and stuff, I was literally tracking every single piece of food I put into my mouth. And I'm there too, Rage. I'm there too. But I was shocked when I started to track this stuff at how many calories were in some foods I was eating. If you had asked me at the beginning, hey, how many calories are you consuming in a day? I probably would have underestimated by a factor of 2 to 3 times. It was significant. And I found the same thing when starting to track what I was spending. Small expenses add up. For example, you have a $5 coffee, right? Doesn't sound like a lot. You have $5 in your pocket, but you do that every day for a month. That's $150 that month that you could have used for something else that could have been put towards savings or whatever. Not saying you don't go get that coffee, but just saying you need to be aware of what you're spending. So this is one of the most probably painful parts of the process. And finally, a budget can reduce your financial stress and help you visualize your progress. It gives you a roadmap. It gives you some tangible thing to look at to make sure that you're moving in the right direction and that you're moving towards your goals and not away from your goals. So what is budgeting exactly? I'm sure you all have a concept in your mind, but let's agree on a very simple definition here. Budgeting is the process of creating a plan for how you will spend your money. Right? Easy. Well, if it's easy, why is it so freaking hard? Why do so many people have problems with budgets? Either they don't have one, they don't know how to make one, they can't stick to one. Well, like I said, the math is extremely easy. And when I say easy, I mean, elementary school children can do this math. It's addition and subtraction. But the psychology and the discipline is where it gets really difficult. Again, same thing as dieting, right? The actual math behind dieting is very simple. You just have to burn more calories than you take in, but it's so difficult to do in practice because we have so many temptations. We have so many curveballs life throws us, stressors, triggers, everything else. It's very easy to get off path. And I find just like people stress eat, people also stress spend. So I think the diet and the budget analogy are gonna, they're gonna walk this path together. There are gonna be so many similarities. So luckily, there are several different approaches to budgeting, and if you find the right one for you, it can make all the difference. That's something I'm going to stress here. I'm going to show you a couple different budget frameworks later on in the presentation. Just because I recommend one or like one for me doesn't mean it's the right one for you. So make sure these are all plans that can be tweaked, and it's important to fit this into your lifestyle and your psychology so that it works for you. And just like dieting, you can't go too strict or you're gonna lash out. You're gonna go on a bender, right? So we'll talk about that as we get into some of the frameworks. But make sure you take this with a grain of salt. This is something that you're gonna need to personalize for yourself, and not just take something that I recommended without thinking about it. So, regardless of the framework you choose, the actual process of budgeting is pretty much the same. You start off by identifying your sources of income. So, obviously, you're going to take something like your salary or bonuses that you make, tips. This could also be, the money you get in your birthday card from grandma. This could be, you went on eBay and sold a bunch of crap. You had a garage sale, whatever the case is. Any money that comes in that you can now spend, you're going to identify as a source of income. And we're going to make it really easy. We're not going to care about things like payroll deductions or taxes, anything that comes off your paycheck. This is only money you control that makes it into your bank account that you can then spend. So don't worry if your check says $1,500 gross and you're taking 1,000 of that into your actual bank account. Just worry about the 1,000. There are maybe some advanced specific reasons you would want to track something like taxes. For the purposes of this conversation, we're not going to worry about it. Ooh, that is some hot tea. Holy shit. Ooh. I burned my tongue, everybody. Oh no. Okay, the next step, you're going to track your expenses for a month. And this, again, is probably going to be painful. It's going to be eye-opening. The important part is to be honest with yourself, because you're only cheating yourself if you lie here. If you're like, oh shit, I spent $500 at Starbucks this month, I'm going to write down 50 to make myself feel a little better. Don't do that. You're only hurting yourself. You don't have to show this to anybody else. Be honest. And this can trigger some crazy emotions. You've heard of buyer's remorse. It's exactly that. When you make an impulse purchase, when you spend money, when you make a stupid financial decision, it can hurt. You feel shameful. You feel embarrassed. You feel mad at yourself. So as you go through this process, you may get pissed off and say, "Oh, why did I spend so much money on X, Y, or Z?" That's okay. That's why you're going through this process. You're going to fix these things, but now's not the time. Now's the time to track this so you have some data that you can start this process with. And then you're going to categorize your expenses. So you're going to go through all your expenditures. And when you track those expenses, you can do it however you like. You can use a notebook. There's plenty of apps for your phone that you can do it with. You can use a spreadsheet. But basically, the information you want to collect is like the date, the amount you spent, who the vendor was, and you want a category for it. This is under entertainment or food or whatever. When you go through and look at those expenses after doing this process, you're going to categorize them into needs and wants. So it's going to be mandatory versus discretionary spending. And this is going to be a personal decision, how those categories line up. I think we can all agree on some of them. If you think about housing, for example, that would be a need, like your mortgage or your rent payment. If you need transportation to get to your job, that could be like a train pass or a car payment. Those would all be needs. Going out with your friends, buying games on Steam, stuff like that would be wants. Some of these categories might straddle. So something like food. We all need food to survive, so we categorize it as a need, but you don't need to go out to a fancy restaurant every night. So in my case, personally, I use groceries as a need and then restaurant spending and takeout and stuff as a want. And so I kind of break it up that way. The important thing with the categories is don't worry about getting it absolutely right on day one. This budget is going to be a living document. You're going to come back and revise this as you go. So you just want to make a first pass and kind of just get things roughly laid out. And then you're going to come back and refine it as you go. So don't worry, it's not written in stone. Oh yeah, that's it. The next step, setting your financial goals. this is, why do you want to save? What are your big goals, your big ticket items? This could be something like saving for a wedding or making a down payment on a house or getting out of debt. I will say, as a universal truth, if you do not have an emergency fund, we're talking about 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up in liquid form that you can access. That should be your top priority until you have that saved up, because that is what is going to stop you from getting into this terrible cycle. I've seen a lot of people trapped in where they're living paycheck to paycheck. They're trying to save up. They get a little bit saved up, and then some unexpected expense comes out. The car breaks down. They have a medical expense. Something happens, and now they have to go and borrow money. What you want to try and do is just get some kind of emergency fund so those kind of expenses don't completely derail you. If something happens and you lose your job, you at least have a few months saved up, so you can be thoughtful about how you react and not in a panicked mode. Yes, Bobs, I would say an emergency fund should be completely separate. Obviously you can count it as part of your net worth. You can look at it as your total financial picture, but it would not really be savings that you would necessarily invest, for example. And in other episodes, we're going to go into much more detail about these different savings accounts and investment vehicles and stuff, where to put what money so that it's safe. You don't want to gamble with your emergency money. You're not going to invest that in the stock market. If anything, you're going to invest it in something very safe, like a CD or, treasury bonds or something like that. But we can get into that at a later time. The next step is allocating your income towards your expenses. This is where you're going to start to assign the money you have available to the things that you need to spend it on. And we'll go into more detail in a later slide on that. And finally, as you go through the month, you're going to track your progress and you're going to make adjustments as necessary. So if you see, you allocated a certain amount towards groceries and you're fastly approaching that number in the middle of the month, you're obviously going to have to revise that up. And that means something else is going to have to be adjusted down. The most important thing is you need to make sure your budget is balanced. If your expenses are greater than your income, something needs to change. This is untenable. That means you're accumulating debt, and we're trying to accumulate assets here. We're trying to accumulate money so you can get rich slow, right? Not get more in debt. How do you do this? Well, you can make more money, right? I know, easier said than done. But seriously, you should think about ways that you might be able to increase your income. You might be a good idea to look at the job market, see if changing jobs makes sense. You could ask your boss for a raise. Everyone here, I think, is familiar with side hustles of some kind. Taking on a second job or something like that. There are certainly options out there, and especially in today's internet economy, there's probably more options than there have been at any time in history for you to go out and make additional money. Now, that's not always possible. So if not, then you have to look at reducing your expenses in some way. The easiest way is to reduce your wants, your discretionary spending. So maybe instead of going out with friends 4 times a month, you go out 3 times a month and you bank a week's money. You can eliminate or cut back on some of these categories. Usually that's fairly easy because, again, these aren't things you need to survive. However, also look and see if you can reduce your mandatory spending, your needs. So one thing I did a few years back, and I was actually really surprised pleasantly with the results, was I called up all of the vendors for things that I thought were bills that couldn't be touched, right? My car insurance and, the cable bill and internet, I needed for work and everything, and my homeowner's insurance, all these different bills that were in my needs column. And I called them up and I just said, hey, your bill is really high. Is there any way I can get it lower? And I was, polite on the phone, didn't call up demanding lower rates or anything. Just asked them hey, what can we do to bring this bill down? Every single company I called had some way to reduce the bill. It might have been a tiny amount, but it was less than I was paying before. The cable company, I was able to go onto a different plan and lower that bill. The car insurance company found some insurance I had from back when the car was financed I didn't need anymore now that it was paid off. All kinds of stuff. My phone company recommended a new bundle plan. So, if you just call up and talk to these companies, they're interested in keeping you as a customer. They will usually try and work with you. And if not, one example where Another previous time I had shopped around for car insurance and the company wasn't willing to work with me, I switched to another company and cut the bill by like 30%. So shop around. Don't think just because you're using, Geico, for example, for your auto insurance right now that you have to stick with them forever. You should evaluate these kind of big bills and your needs category, I would say at least once a year, and see if there's any wiggle room there. Call up, have the conversation. Another great example of this is credit card fees. I had an ex-girlfriend years and years ago who taught me if you get a late fee on your credit card, call them up and ask them to reverse it. If you don't do it habitually, most of the credit card companies have a rule that you can only do it once a year, but they will reverse the late charge and the interest in the interest of keeping you happy as a customer. Now, obviously, if you abuse it, they're going to tell you no. But I never knew that. I just thought, hey, you got assessed a fee. I was late making the payments. My fault. I deserve to pay the fee, right? No, call them up and say, I don't want to pay the fee. Is there any way you could reverse this as a courtesy? I was shocked at that. Absolutely shocked. All right, I'm going in for more tea. Hang on, this could be bad. Yeah, I had no idea about that, Bobs. Fascinating. And subscriptions. Subscriptions are one of the worst things right now. We have so many subscriptions, we lose track of them. I'm guilty of this as well. So just go into your phone, make sure like all the shit you're paying for is stuff you're using. Make sure you're not paying for like 18 different, streaming video apps when you're only watching 3 of them. If you have cable, make sure you're paying for the channels you're using and not paying for like, premium channels that you don't need. I know there are services out there that I'm sure you've seen, like the ads on Reddit. Oh, sign up for our service. We'll identify, the subscriptions you don't need. Screw that. Do it yourself. Any of these services looking to help you out, it's usually easy things you can do yourself, and they're just going to eat into the profit that you're going to make by doing this stuff. So take the initiative, make the phone calls, do a little research. You'll be surprised at how much money you can save just by really going through and analyzing your spending. Okay, so let's talk about a couple different budgeting frameworks. Excuse me. Check your Twitch subs. Yeah. Yes, but whatever you do not unsubscribe to this channel or Rage's channel or Maki's channel or Bob's channel. Unsubscribe from the people you don't watch anymore, right? Okay, anyway. Budgeting frameworks. This is one that is kind of recent. It's called 50-30-20, and you'll see this a lot with more modern financial presentations. It's made to be simple to start with. I think the premise is that people think, young people can't do math anymore and don't want to be bothered with like spreadsheets and shit. So they tried to dumb it down. Now, that's good and bad. I don't personally recommend this budget framework because I think it's a little too simple. But if you told me, hey, I'm going to do 50-30-20, or I'm not going to budget at all, I would say, absolutely. This is better than nothing. It'll at least get you started. And again, just because it's not right for me doesn't mean it's not right for you. The premise of the 50-30-20 plan is you take 50% of your income. What defines young people? I don't know. You'd have to ask the people who think they can't do math, but I'm thinking they're thinking like Gen Zers. What do they call them now? Zoomers, right? That's where I'm guessing. But you all are young people to me. So you take your income, you split it in half. You take that 50%, that goes to your needs. 30% go to wants, 20% go to goals. So let's look at a quick little example here. On the left-hand side, we have our income. So you brought home $2,000 from your salary. You got a sales bonus of $100. You have $2,100 of income that you can allocate. And we have our expenses. Instead of listing our expenses by categories, you split it by percentages. Exactly right, Bobs. It's simple. It's easy to do. The only problem I have with this is it doesn't tell you what to do when you don't line up with these percentages, right? What if my needs are 60% and not 50? What if I know I have $630 I can spend on once, but I want to go to the bar tonight. How much can I spend? I have no concept of what other expenses are competing for that money. So I might say, hey, I have $630 to go spend at the bar, and I go there and I treat all my friends to a bunch of rounds of drinks. And then the next day I'm like, oh shit, I forgot that video game's going on sale today that I needed $30 for, and I don't have it anymore. So just from a planning perspective, I don't love this, but you're absolutely right. It's dead simple. It makes it very easy to just split up your income into those buckets and you're done. So don't discount it. If you want to start here and then move on later, perfectly fine. Like I said, I would much rather see you using this than using nothing. Next is what we call the line item or traditional budget. This is probably what you all thought of when I said budget. This is like what you would see in a corporate financial document, a balance sheet, things like that. It's boring, but it's very effective. So here we have the same income on the left. This time we've listed our expenses out, right? So we just have a couple sample expenses here: rent, utilities, debt payments, groceries. Those I would all list as needs. And then we have our fun money, $200. We'll call that a want. We're spending $1,700. Excellent. We're running a surplus here, right? We have a $400 positive balance at the end of the month. Excellent. This is exactly what we want to see. My only problem with this is they don't tell you what to do with that $400, right? Obviously, you're going to want to save it, but it'd be nice if you didn't have it just hanging there tempting you, because that's how impulse buying happens. And I can guarantee you it's happened to me. You get to the end of the month, you're like, shit, yeah, I did a great job on my budget this month. I have this $400. And then boom, you go out and like buy something. And now you just erased all that progress that you made, instead of knowing like, oh, here's where I need to be allocating that money for it to be the most use. And that brings me to zero based. Now, this is my preferred budget method. It's very similar to line item budgeting, except every dollar gets a job. And this is a concept that I really like, is talking about being your own CFO. You hear people talk about being the CEO of your life and, like handling things like a boss. Well, you need to do the same thing with your finances. Be your own financial executive, be your own CFO, and your employees are the dollars that you have in your bank account. So you want to make sure all these dollars are pulling their weight and doing work for you. Eventually, when we start talking about savings and investing, that's where your dollars are going to start generating more dollars. And that's where this concept is really going to become powerful. But for now, it's simply, you want to make sure that all these dollars you have are getting allocated to where you want them to be. So again, we have the same budget scenario here. This time, however, we've added in a couple of our kind of like long-term goal buckets here. Emergency fund, we're going to allocate $200, wedding fund $100, vacation fund $100. There's our $400 surplus. Now it's very clear looking at this what those funds are earmarked for. And we can keep track that we're funding our emergency fund and our wedding fund and our vacation fund, and it puts us at ease. We're not going to impulsively spend that $400. We're going to know this is earmarked for better purposes. And it's kind of right in your face where I like it to be. So this is what I do personally. It's pretty much what I just showed you, except I also bring in the concept of periodic expenses and bucketing. So it's a zero-based budget with buckets and periodic expenses. What are periodic expenses? These are the things that don't happen every month. A mistake everyone makes the first budget you create. You're not thinking through the whole year. You tracked your expenses last month, and you come in and you say, okay, I spent X amount on groceries and this much on cable TV and blah, blah, blah. And you don't think, oh, in 3 months, my car insurance payment's due. Or, oh, in September, I got to pay my Amazon Prime bill. So what I like to do is go through and think about all the other bills you have throughout the year that happen sporadically. And then you set them up in your budget so you're accruing towards those bills. So in this example, we have a $300 car insurance bill. Hold on, I think I even have a virtual laser pointer. Look at this. Yes. So here we have $300 car insurance payment, which is due every 6 months. So what do? We say, okay, I need to save $300 divided by 6 months. That's $50 a month. So I put in my budget, car insurance, $50. Amazon Prime is $120 a year, call it. We divide 120 by 12 months. We have to accrue $10 a month. And this balance on the right-hand side is going to show us what we have in these buckets. So assume this budget has been running now for 2 months and we haven't broken it. We've put all the proper funding in place. We have $100 in this car insurance bucket. We have $20 in the Amazon Prime bucket. What this means is when those bills come due, we will have the money to pay them sitting aside already. And that money is sitting there waiting for us to spend it, and it's earning interest, or we have it invested in some very safe instrument. So it's making you more money while you're waiting to pay those bills. But when the bill comes due, the money is set aside and ready to go. This is how you stop living paycheck to paycheck, is that you accrue for these things that are sporadic expenses that happen throughout the year. Notice that we now have $60 we increased our budget by, our expenses by, which meant we had to reduce some things. So in this case, our fund money went down from 200 to 160. That got us $40. Our wedding and vacation funds went down by $10 each. That got us the extra 20. So now we're back in balance. You always have to make sure you're in balance. If you're going to spend more money on something, you have to take it out of another category. And you can see here, we have also started to accrue money in our other buckets. Our emergency fund, our wedding fund, our vacation fund all have 2 months of funding in there. What about fund money? So that's zero right now. But say, we don't spend that whole $160. Say we get sick 1 week out of the month and we stay home instead of going out with our friends. So now we have $40 extra at the end of the month that we would have spent on fund money. You can have that show as a balance in this bucket and let it carry forward. So now next month you have $200 to spend. Or you can say, you know what? I would rather take that money and put it into the wedding fund or the vacation fund. So as you start to build up these buckets, you can, reallocate things and move the money where you want it to be. And this balance, this $880 is going to be in a separate account. It's going to be somewhere in a savings account where I can't access it. I can access it easily if I need it, but not super easily. I don't want the temptation where I'm going to pull money out of that account and start spending it. So we're going to basically keep this segregated out. And what I do at the beginning of the month, I'll look through and say, okay, I need to put $50 in the car insurance, $10 into Prime, blah, 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 blah. I'll add up all the numbers and I'll transfer that money out into that savings account. And if I say, oh, this is the month my Amazon bill is coming due, I'll transfer out that $120 back into checking. And so I have that money to spend. So it's sort of like this reconciliation process that you do at the beginning of every month. This requires discipline. You got to keep your hands off that money. It is not money to be spent. It is money that has been allocated for other uses. So that's probably the hardest part. And there's some tricks on how to lock your money up without locking it up that we'll talk about when we get into savings and checking account in a separate episode. These aren't budgeting frameworks, but you'll see these topics mentioned a lot when referring to budgeting. The first one is pay yourself first. Ooh, that's still hot. It's getting better though. So pay yourself first. This definitely helps if you lack discipline. This is like your taxes get taken off the top of your paycheck. You want your money for your savings to get taken off the top of your paycheck as well. So I knew a coworker years ago who actually filled out their direct deposit paperwork so that $100 of every paycheck went into a savings account and then the balance went into their checking account. They were getting this savings account that was growing slowly over time. It was out of sight, out of mind, so they didn't think to spend it, and they were just looking at their checking account to go over what they could actually spend and what they had available to use. It's a very, very effective tactic, assuming that you have the discipline to stay out of that account. But out of sight, out of mind, it does work. And if you do this, I would use automated transfers so you don't even see the money. You don't have to be like, I got to transfer the $100 into savings this month. Because what happens? You're like, oh, I could do that. But, Johnny says like everyone's going out tonight. It'd be nice to go see everybody. I'm going to take that $100 and go spend it. And that's what happens. You get these things that pop up and you spend through the money before you transfer it into your savings. Make it automated. You don't even have to think about it. And eventually you'll have a pretty decent nest egg built up in there. And then you'll see this was more prevalent when people spent cash more, but called envelope systems or cash stuffing. People literally used to go to the bank and take out like the money that they were going to spend that week and put it into envelopes. They'd have an envelope for groceries and an envelope for whatever. And they knew, okay, I can spend the money in the envelope, and when it's gone, I'm done with that category. Now, I wouldn't, there's no way you're going to do this for your whole budget nowadays. I hate cash personally. But some people, psychologically, it helps to have like a tactile or physical representation of a budget item. So this might be something like your fun money with friends, right? You could say, hey, every month I'm going to allocate $100 to going out drinking with my friends. I'm going to put that money in an envelope at the beginning of the month. And I know now when I go to the bar, I'm going to take that envelope with me. I can spend whatever's in there guilt-free, don't have to think about it. But when I run out, I'm done. So that could work depending on your psychology, how you see things. I've seen this be very successful with people where just having that physical like barrier to spending more helped them stick to a budget item. And, you kind of see this with the bucketing system I'm using in my budget. We're using virtual envelopes here to save for our goals or for periodic expenses. And this could be something that is just you track on a spreadsheet or track in budget software, or it can literally be separate savings accounts. The nice thing about online savings accounts now, a lot of them allow you to open up as many sub-accounts as you want and call them different names, right? So you can have you could have like your emergency fund savings account and your, wedding fund savings account. They're all rolling up into the same account. So paperwork wise for taxes and stuff, it's not extra work, but you can look at that on your statement and see it all broken out. It can be helpful. So the monthly process. Hey, Madge, welcome in. Oh yeah, Madge, absolutely. If you guys have any stuff to post in the Discord, yeah, feel free. So the monthly process that you're going to go through with your budgeting. So the first step, you're going to review last month's data and refine. Obviously, if it's your first month budgeting, you're not going to have last month's data. But after you get through that first month, you're going to look back and see what worked and what didn't. Did you blow through a particular category? Did you way overestimate a particular category? Now you have a lot of money left over. So you want to adjust any numbers that didn't work for you, but be careful about this. You're going to add in any new income sources and expense categories. You have to think about it though. We're seeing something now, which is interesting. I was driving on the highway yesterday and I saw a billboard by a realty group basically begging people to sell their houses, saying inventory is so short right now. We need more houses. We need more houses. And when I saw that, the first thing I thought of is all these realtors over the last couple of years with COVID were selling houses for ridiculous amounts of money. And they basically had more houses than they knew what to do with, right? So they probably all adjusted their lifestyles up, adjusted their budgets up to meet this new income, but that was temporary. They should have known being in sales that was not sustainable. And now that things have dropped back down to a more reasonable level, all of a sudden there's a gap between what they're making and what they were spending. That can happen very easily. So when you say like, hey, I'm going to add this new income source, and make sure it wasn't like a windfall, like a one-time thing. You don't want to add that in expecting that to happen every month. You want to think about this a little bit and make sure your income and expenses are regular, repeatable things. If you did have something like, a bonus that happens once a year, you could do the same thing you're doing with your periodic expenses and track it as like periodic income. I don't recommend doing that unless you're really comfortable with budgeting, because it makes you think there's more money available to spend than you have at the moment. Even if you're going to get it by the end of the year, if you're in month 2, you don't want to be counting on that money until it's actually in your hands. So for income, I would really only work with stuff that you're guaranteed to get. And then if you get bonus money in, you can add it in for that particular month, but don't adjust your budget going forward thinking, oh, I'm going to make the same money next month. It sounds simple, but I've seen people do that over and over again, and it gets you in trouble. And now you're going to make any necessary transfers. So money that you can't spend should be moved to another account. So it's not sitting in your checking account laughing at you saying, spend me, spend me. Money that you need for those periodic expenses that are coming due, you should move back to your checking account so you can actually pay those bills. And you want to track things as you go. So as you go throughout the month, you're going to refer back to the budget. You're going to see how much money you have left for each expense category, and you're going to record your spending as you go. So this is something you're going to check in. Some people check in every day. Some people check in only when they go to spend money, see how much you have left in your grocery budget, for example. But you want to make sure you're not, you don't set your budget on day 1 of the month, and now it's 2 weeks in, and you go and you're like, fuck it, I'm going to spend $500 at Whole Foods. And you come back and you realize your grocery budget was only $200. So you want to keep tabs on things, and then you're going to keep recording your spending. That is not something you're going to stop doing, because to know if you're meeting your budget, you're going to need to know what you're spending, right? There are apps out there that can download the activity from your bank and your credit cards and track it for you. Some banks have reports and stuff that can break this stuff out for you. However you want to do it, doesn't matter. You just want to make sure that you're recording that spending on an ongoing basis and putting it into the categories. And this is also where you might revise. You might say, hey, this particular category, I want to break it down into subcategories. I want to get more granular with it. For example, I know people who were tracking, instead of just like restaurant expenses, they were tracking breakfast, lunch, and dinner separately, because they wanted to see, am I spending too much money on takeout at breakfast? Am I spending too much money taking people out to dinner? That is going to be completely up to you how granular you get with these categories. Just know that the more granular you get, the more work it is to categorize and track this stuff. So I would recommend doing big blocky categories at first until you find a need to go more granular. Like something like utilities. You might want to track, what you're paying for electric versus gas versus water. Or you might say, I don't give a shit. I just know that I owe this much for utilities, and that's all I care about. So if you don't have a need to go granular, don't. It's fun to see the data. It can be useful sometimes, but it also adds a lot of overhead. And now you're going to repeat. This is going to be an ongoing process. You're not going to stop after 1 month. You're going to keep going. And just like a diet, this is something that should become a lifestyle change and not just like a crash diet that you're going to do for a few months and then stop. And inevitably, things will go wrong. So what happens when you mess up? Like when you spill tea all over everything. Okay. First of all, don't panic and don't beat yourself up. It happens. I've never seen anyone nail a budget on the first try. I've never seen anyone nail a budget on the 10th try. I still have to adjust things because I over or underestimated things. It's part of the process. Don't beat yourself up. And also important, I think, fits into this category. Don't compare your budget to other people. Don't compare your finances to other people. Don't get in that trap, because everyone's situation is unique, and you're just gonna find someone who's in a better position than you. It's gonna make you feel bad, and you're gonna get all pissed off at yourself. So don't get mad. Don't panic. You're gonna look at the data that you've been recording and figure out where you went wrong. Did you overestimate something, your income or expenses, or was it a discipline issue? Like, did you just like completely, fail at stopping yourself from buying some impulse purchase? You can adjust your budget as necessary. So if you find that every month, you're like, you can't stop yourself from going out with your friends when you weren't trying to, maybe you say, hey, it's time to build that in as a category, so I'm accounting for it and it's not surprising me every month. Or you adjust your behavior if possible and say, no, I'm really going to try and not go out this month, which I think is the harder of the two. And you try and do better next month. This is an ongoing process. This budget is a living document. You're going to revise it every month. You're going to try harder each month, and you're just going to try and aim for your goals. Even if you get 80% of the way to your goals in a particular month, that's still better than zero. You're still, just by the process of recording this stuff and looking at it and thinking about it, you're going to be more aware of your financial situation, and you're going to naturally start making better decisions, because you're going to see where you're going wrong, and it's going to make you feel bad. You're going to say, I don't want to mess up. I don't want to feel this way. So just by the recording process and going through this process, it's going to help you do better. And finally, don't go it alone. So I'm going to announce now, I'm going to be setting up the Money Club on my Discord. We've all seen Discords that have fitness channels where you can join in, and it's, a non-judgmental, supportive group where people, can talk about their successes and failures and goals, and everyone supports each other and helps each other out. I am going to be doing that for your financial fitness. We're going to set this up on my Discord, and you're going to be able to join that and join a bunch of like-minded people who are all there just to help each other meet our goals, give each other advice, talk about problems you're having, where you're hitting that friction, and we can help each other out. So I'm really excited about this. It's not quite set up yet, but it will be within, I'd say, an hour of getting off this stream. And I invite everyone to come join and hang out. It should be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be very useful for people. And I'm looking for 2 volunteers. I would like to find 2 people with kind of diverse situations here and do live case studies that we're going to come back and check in on as we go through more episodes of Money Mondays. This will be as confidential as you want it to be. I can anonymize the data, make it, no one will know who you are, or if you don't mind sharing, we can share your specifics. But basically, I want to kind of coach 2 people through this process and see where you're hitting trouble, see how you're doing. We can talk about what was easy, what wasn't easy, how you're going to adjust things. There will be cake, meaning the 2 volunteers who volunteer for this, I am going to give you guys some kind of gift card, Amazon or Steam gift card for $20 as a thank you for participating in the process. So if you would like to be considered for that, reach out to me. You can either reach out in the Money Club once we get that set up. You can reach out on my Discord, on Twitch, Twitter. I'll have all my contact information at the end of the presentation here. And reach out to me if you have any questions. Rage Sourdough is a possible, yeah, we can talk about that as a payment method. Absolutely. If you have any questions and you don't want to post it in the Money Club or somewhere else, reach out to me privately. I'm happy to talk to you about this stuff. If you have a specific situation you want to talk about, if you have a question about something, if something's unclear, please reach out. I'm available throughout a variety of ways to get a hold of me. And we can certainly talk offline about anything that you have questions about. Stacking the bricks. So we talked before about budgeting being kind of the beginning of your financial foundation. So just wanted to talk briefly about some of the other topics I have planned for future episodes. So some stuff, just big level topics, setting your financial goals, the ins and outs of checking and savings accounts. There's a ton of different products out there now that are very different, and it helps to kind of know the landscape before you start moving your money into these places. Planning for retirement, that's going to be US centric, but I think it will help even if you're in a different country, kind of with some concepts. How to get started with investing, a very, very scary topic for people, but one which is critical if you want to accumulate wealth. If you want to make more, if you want to wind up with more money than you're making at your job, you have to invest it. There are safe ways to do this. Do not listen to anyone telling you can get rich quick. Do not listen to day trading ideas. Do not listen to crypto schemes. Do not listen to any of that bullshit. The way you invest is you find good, solid companies that you park your money in and you leave it there for a very fucking long time. Or even better, you go with index funds. You basically invest in the economy of a country or countries. So you're not riding all in one bucket. You have to be diversified in your investments. You have to have a long-term approach, and you will accumulate money. It takes time. And that's why I said it's so important to get this started early, because time will help you. Time mitigates risk. Time lets you compound interest and compound dividends. That is your biggest asset. Your most important asset is the time you have before retirement. Don't wait on this shit. The earlier you can start, the better. Debt management. What happens if you're carrying a bunch of debt? What happens if your debt is just crushing you and there's no way out? We'll talk about things like bankruptcy. We'll talk about plans to get rid of credit card debt in a very strategic manner. Credit scores, protecting your credit. Credit scores are very important for pretty much anything you want to do in the financial landscape. But what are they? What do they mean? How are they calculated? And how do you protect them and get them high so that you get good rates on loans and things like that? How to use credit cards and how not to use them. I'm always shocked when I hear that the younger generations, like millennials and Gen Z, they hate credit cards. They won't use them. Now, I completely understand hating debt, but credit cards are one of the best tools you can use, because basically you can get paid perks for spending the money that you're already going to get paid. The trick is to know how to use the credit cards and know which ones to use and how not to be the customer the banks want you to be. I'm the customer the banks fucking hate because I don't give those credit cards a fucking dime unless it's for a very specific purpose. And I'll teach you kind of how to navigate that and what to look for, and some really good entry-level cards with no annual fees that get you cash back and things. And you can really leverage those to your benefit. Understanding insurance, whether you're talking about medical, life, disability, auto, homeowners, insurance is protection for you. As you start to accumulate your assets, you're going to want to protect them. You're going to want to have something in place so that something can't wipe them out. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Finally, real estate, the age-old argument, renting versus buying. There's no one answer to that. It depends on you and your scenario. And taxes. Taxes, probably one of the most misunderstood concepts. It's something that we all have to deal with. It's something that if you do it smartly, you can get away with paying the minimum that you legally need to pay. If you do it unwisely, you wind up giving the government a lot more money, and you also wind up giving the government a tax-free loan for 11 months out of the year. Why are you going to do that? Why are you going to give them your money when you could keep that money, hang on to it, earn interest on it, invest it, and then just pay the taxes when they're due? We'll talk about how to work that scenario. And I'm really excited to announce that I've been talking to a couple friends and people who are also financial professionals. And I'm going to have some co-hosts and some guests on for some of these topics. Already kind of confirmed, I'm going to have Ice Cold Car. She is a tax audit professional. She's going to be talking with us about taxes at some point in the future. My friend Jay is a very successful artist, and he is going to talk about the financial aspects of being a creative and how to make money off your art and not be a starving artist for the rest of your life. And those are just kind of the first two that I've reached out to, but we're going to have, I'm really hoping this becomes a series that will be helpful to people. And I want to bring on a bunch of different people to have conversations with. Doesn't even have to be finance professionals, could be anyone from the audience. If you want to come on and just be a part of a conversation about finance, I think hearing different people's stories and voices really helps kind of flesh out some of these topics. So we'll come back to, I have two more slides, which is just contact info stuff. So we'll come back to that at the end of the stream. We're just about an hour in. So this is kind of where I wanted to be at this point. And let's jump back over here. And let me try and catch up on chat. So does anyone, hey, Swag, what's going on? So I apologize. I kind of saw a couple things through chat. I'm going to have to read through this, but Maki, did we have any questions that you want to bring to my attention, or does anyone have any questions or comments on this particular topic, on the budgeting topic for right now? And then we're going to open it up to basically anything anybody wants to ask about. We can talk about. But if anyone has any specific questions about the budgeting topic or anything that I kind of discussed over the last hour, I'd love to hear it. Let me try and consume a bit more tea here. Nothing pressing popped up that I didn't touch on. What is a checking account? Are you being serious, Madge? Do they not have checking accounts in Australia? So, answer the one you were going to ask. So, Madge, here in the US, checking accounts, they call them that because you used to have physical checks that you would write out of the account. It's basically an account made to spend out of as opposed to a savings vehicle. Many checking accounts don't earn interest. Rage says, do I really have to move my money from savings to checking? Your checking account gets interest. No, but I bet if we look at the interest you're getting on your checking account, you can get a lot more from a high yield savings account. Right now, there are a number of really good high yield savings accounts out there that make it super easy to transfer your money. The transfers don't cost you anything. They're electronic. They happen within a day. So it's very easy and fast to move money back and forth. And you can get, right now, the rates I was looking at today, they're around 4 3/4 is on the high end. Most of them are averaging around 4%. If you are getting that interest already in your checking account, no, you don't necessarily have to move the money. It's going to require you to be extra disciplined and keep a bookmark in your mind of what money is available to spend and what money is not. That's the whole real purpose of moving it out. One, because you can usually find a savings account that's going to pay you more, so why not keep it over there when you don't need the money? But two, it's also that psychological thing of getting the money out of your face. So you're not looking at it when you look at your balance. So the answer to your question, Rage, is no, but I would probably want to look at like your specific rates that you're getting and see if you can do better. I would be surprised if you can't find better. You don't hear of them anymore. So I guess in the US, it's fairly rare. It's a lot more rare for people to write checks. I still have like 2 or 3 checks I have to write a month. For various vendors that we get stuff from that don't take any kind of electric payments and stuff. But the term checking account we kind of use as I guess it's just leftover from the old days when it was really a check account. But we distinguish here in the US between like a checking account and a savings account. And there are different regulatory things for both of those as well. One example is certain savings accounts, you cannot make more than a certain number of withdrawals from per month. The bank will not allow you to because it's a federal regulation here. So you can only do like 6 transfers out per month, whereas a checking account, you're not limited on how many transactions you can do. So there's a bunch of different types of savings accounts. You might have heard of money market accounts, high yield savings accounts. There are different nuances with some of this stuff. Oh my God, we have a raid. Your bank has 0.25 interest for savings. Yeah, so Bob's, well, first of all, welcome in, Raiders. 22 viewers. Holy cow, Car. JB, welcome in. Mrs. Spock, how are you? Car, how is your stream? How's everything going? Welcome in, everybody. Thank you so much for the raid. You guys are amazing. We just finished up the budgeting presentation, and I'm kind of opening the floor up to questions about anything about finance or the economy or anything you might have on your mind. So if you guys who just came in have any questions, feel free to hit me up. And otherwise, I have a couple things I cherry picked off the internet we can talk about, some interesting scenarios. Because I'll be honest, all of the questions I got with my form were all related to budgeting. So it was not only, it was the topic I had picked as the first episode's topic. And that just kind of underscored, all right, people are actually interested in this stuff and want to hear this. So thank you, Car. Yes. And actually, I think the air conditioning is doing its job. I was really hot at the beginning of the stream, but it's cooling off a little. So we're gonna leave the jacket on. Cleaning up nicely, sir. Thank you, JB. Yeah, so I'm just kind of catching up with chat. And basically, we were talking about budgeting as being the foundation of your financial house. You need a stable foundation to build on, and that sets up everything else. Bob's, it's funny. My bank doesn't really pay any interest in their savings account. They're known to pay 0.01% interest. And why is that? Why would a bank do that? Because why does a bank pay interest at all? It's to attract your money into the bank, right? They want your deposits, because how does a bank make money? They take your deposits and they loan them out to other people, and they make money on those loans. Now, as interest rates go up, loan costs go up, right? If you go to get a mortgage now, rates are higher than they were, 2 years ago. And so a lot of banks will need to also raise the amount that they're paying on their savings or checking accounts to attract people to come in. Depending on your bank, the big banks don't give a shit. Like if you're talking about like a Goldman Sachs bank or a JP Morgan, these guys have more money than they know what to do with, more cash than they can even put to use. So they have zero incentive to pay you anything. They're like, you want a bank here? Come on in. If you don't, go fuck yourself. We don't need your money. If you think about when our parents and grandparents banked, banks would actually want a relationship with you. They would give you a toaster. They would give you something. Come on in, open the account. We'll give you some home appliances. How far have we gotten from that? I remember when I went to go open my first bank accounts as a kid. My parents took me. We had the passbook savings accounts where they actually gave you like the little book that you would bring in, and they would write how much money you had in there and stamp it and stuff. And I was pissed that we didn't get a toaster. I was like, I thought you guys gave out toasters. I used to see that in the cartoons all the time. right? I want a toaster as well. I think we need to go back to giving toasters out. Um, what else we got going on here? Thank you for the compliment, Car. I hope you had a very good stream. Bruce, why would you stay with them? A lot of people stay with the big banks because of one of two reasons. Either a service they offer, like you might need, for example, a bank that banks internationally. One thing back in the day when I was writing apps for iPhones, it was tough to find a bank that could handle all the different currencies because Apple wanted to pay you in all the different currencies if you were selling your app across the world. Otherwise, you had to pay them ridiculous conversion fees. So people would go to like an HSBC because they would allow you to open an account with no fees and take in all these different currencies, and they would convert it for you for a better rate. So it's either a service that bank offers that you want. It could be convenience, right? Like the bank has a branch in your apartment building. That's a reason I hear a lot. Just it's easy. Or it could be, security. Like I may want to put my money with Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan because I think they're at a smaller risk of going under than the small regional bank or the credit union down the street. Now, the real truth of the matter is you shouldn't bank with those. If you're not getting money, don't keep your money there. And that bank that I mentioned that I use that pays 0.01, I don't keep my money there, my savings. I have my savings in another account where they pay me a decent rate. And when I moved my money out, I went to the bank and had them transfer the money over. And the woman goes, "Well, why are you moving all the money out?" I said, "Because you guys don't pay me anything." And she's like, "Yep, we hear that a lot." Yeah, banks still have branches. There are some banks with no branches now. That's becoming more common. A lot of these online high yield savings account banks and stuff, they may not have a physical branch, or you're banking with a bank that doesn't have a branch in your location. Like some of these online banks, they might be like Western US. You can still put your money in online, but you'll never see a branch over here on like the East Coast, for example. Credit unions are a much different animal than banks. It's more like you're part owner of the institution. It's more. I would almost make the analogy to like more of a club. And I would say if you have a credit union that you like, most of the time they offer better terms and you're going to get better customer service. And especially there are some, credit unions really kind of came about for specialized purposes. You hear about a lot of like military credit unions, for example, for veterans and their families. They have some that were specific to certain unions if you were in the trades. And it was really a bunch of people with similar interests getting together and saying, let's start a quote unquote bank that caters to our people, to our situation. And so you got kind of all these like small little niche credit unions popping up. And now, they've become competitive with the banks. There's a lot of interesting stuff on a regulatory standpoint, but credit unions have caught up and done away with a lot of the reasons you might not want to go to a credit union in the past. So if you like credit unions, there's nothing wrong with using them. And honestly, unless you have a really specific purpose, any bank, any credit union is going to be able to serve your purposes as long as they give you a place to put your money and they pay you some kind of interest for your savings and they give you the ability to make online payments or write checks or whatever. You're pretty much fine. The only question you have is the bank going to go under? And honestly, if you're within the FDIC insurance limits, that's not even something you truly have to worry about on a major level. Let's see what else we have. You love your credit union. You like having a branch. You know the people there. That's another thing, Rage. Like, especially in smaller towns and stuff, you know your bankers. You know the people that you're working with. They might know you your whole life. I've known people who banked, the same bank their father and their grandfather banked at, and they had the same banker for years and years and years. There's something to be said for that. We've lost a lot of the personal relationships, and that's kind of the trade-off. As the banks want to pay you more interest, they don't want to make less money, so they're going to try and cut. So a lot of these banks that are paying the really high interest rates are internet-only banks or something like that because they don't have the overhead of staff and a branch and real estate that they have to manage. But again, as long as they're a chartered bank, as long as they're a legit bank that is regulated by the U.S. government, they have the same rules and regulations and everything as a bank with branches. It's not like, you can't just go open up a shady online bank. As long as it's a reputable company that is like legitimately chartered as a bank, you don't really have to fear some of these institutions just because they don't have a branch. Personable thing, Bob says. Carr likes the branches too. Savings accounts around 4.5%, which is good. A year ago it was 0.1. So we're hitting those levels too now, Bruce. Again, our rates are driven off of the bank's desire to get your business and also how much money the bank can make loaning their money out. So I'm sure, as you guys have noticed, as the Fed has raised the Fed funds effective target, and what the Federal Reserve does, it's a group of banks in different regions across the U.S., and they work together to set the monetary policy and enact the monetary policy of the government. So they basically put money in the system or take money out of the system to make it cheaper or more expensive for banks to loan money to one another. And that's really what drives our entire financial network here, is banks lending to one another, because banks are all highly leveraged. They're required to keep a certain amount of deposits for reserve requirements, so that they, that's supposed to cushion them if there's a run on the bank or something. As we saw last month, sometimes that doesn't help for various reasons. But basically, there are mechanisms in place where banks can loan money very, very quickly to one another, and they do so all the time, so that if Bank A is a little bit short today, they borrow from Bank B and pay them back tomorrow. These are all like overnight loans just to keep people from violating the regulations. And the government also loans money and borrows money from banks and back and forth and stuff. It's pretty complex, but that's what drives all these interest rates. So as the federal government raises these rates, it costs the banks more to do their business. They then raise the rate of loans. So if you go to get a car loan or a mortgage or something, you're going to pay more. And then the banks can pay more to the savings customers to try and get more of their business. That's in a nutshell. Still had to do a hard check against your credit. That's off your report now, so it's fine. And that's become less common, Rage. I don't know what year that was. They've changed some of the regs. I'm not 100% up on the credit check stuff, but I do know they've made a lot of those checks when you're trying to open accounts and stuff are now soft pulls. But even if they're hard pulls, it doesn't mess you up unless it's a pattern of activity. It might, like, people get really worked up over credit scores. I know people who track them, and if they go down a point or two, they like freak out. We're going to have a whole episode on credit scores because it's a fascinating thing. It's something I think is not a very, it's not good for society. It's something the banks latched onto because it's a very easy, metric for them to look at and compare, in their minds, apples to oranges. But the problem is, it doesn't really capture someone's scenario. But in today's fast-moving, internet-based society, banks don't have the time to get to know you. Like Rage said, it used to be you'd have like a banker that you knew, and they knew you. They knew what your business was. They knew, if you were depositing more money this year than last year. They would ask about your family. They knew if someone was sick. They knew like if you got laid off at your job, whatever. And so when you went into the bank to ask for a loan, you were talking to someone who kind of already knew your creditworthiness. But nowadays, the banks don't know you. And they don't have any way to get to know you. They don't have any interest in getting to know you. So they needed a way to come up with a number. And this is what they came up with. In reality, you have 3 credit scores, if you're in the US at least. There's 3 credit unions, and each one has a different score, and each one is calculated differently, and each one is a very secret and very, very, very closely guarded calculation. They will not leak those algos. But people through trial and error have kind of sussed out what drives those credit scores up and down. So the bottom line is, credit scores are important, but not as important as you might think. It's more of like what bucket you sit in. The actual score, if it goes up a point or down a point, doesn't matter at all. But if you're an 800 versus a 600, you're going to see a big difference in rates when you go to try and go out for a loan or something like that. Australia is run by the big four banks. While it appears that there are a lot of banks that are all owned by the big four, all bank accounts in Australia are guaranteed by the government up to $250K. That's the same here in the US. Ruby, that reminds you, why the hell does someone taking a look at your score affect it? It seems like such a backwards way of doing things. Bruce is exactly right. When it says the theory is on if you're making many applications, it's bad. Or, it's basically saying... It's signaling to the credit unions and to the banks that you're looking to borrow money, right? And if you're shopping around quite a bit, it might mean that you are in financial distress, right? Because there's two types of people who go and take out loans: people who are in financial distress and people who are not in financial distress, who are just doing normal everyday fucking things like buying a car or buying a house. So it is pretty fucking pointless, but the banks have decided this is like, hey, keep an eye on this guy. He might be trouble because he's fucking transacting in the economy. This is one of the reasons why I think credit scores are fucking bullshit, but that's a topic for another day. Credit scores are pretty much meaningless in Australia. Defaults will destroy you, but these scores essentially mean nothing. I would say in the US, so a good example, I was looking at... I was on a car website, like looking at the new Audis that came out, and I was trying to see how much the new like electric Audis cost, and it's freaking ridiculous. But anyway, I went on the kind of monologuing. I went on the loan calculator, right? I'm like, let me see what this would cost, because the car itself is like it's like $115,000 some shit for this car. Like, holy shit. So I'm like, what would that even be in like a monthly payment? And when I went on to see like, all right, you want to lease the car and they have a slider for your credit score. And I was like, oh, this is a great way to see like how much does your credit score actually affect the payment? And so if I went all the way to the top and say the monthly cost was like $700 a month for the lease, and that was like an 830 credit score, 820 credit score. As I started to bring it down, I didn't see a change until I got down like below 700. And then it went up from like 700 a month to like 850 a month. And then again, when I got like below 600, it jumped up to like $1,100 a month or something. So the credit scores here, again, it depends on the institution, but a lot of them don't really care what your exact score is. They care kind of what category you're in. And if you look at the credit unions, they do rate you in buckets. It'll be like very poor, all the way up to like elite credit. So that can affect your like credit card applications. Like if you have really good credit and you apply for a credit card online, you can get approved instantly instead of having to wait for someone to actually review your application. It can affect the rates of offers you're getting, all kinds of stuff. Loan rates. So it is important here in the US. It's definitely something you want to be aware of. And they've made it very easy now. Everyone can get their credit reports for free. Looking at your credit and looking at your credit reports is extremely important. You should do this at a minimum once a year. And you should probably think about freezing your credit, because that is something that happens when your identity gets stolen. People go and open up all kinds of accounts in your name, ring up all kinds of bills. They don't pay them. You don't find out until months later. That stuff stays on your report. It's a lot of work to get it off. Even if you have a police report, even if you've reported everything and done all the note taking and everything, it takes a long time and a lot of effort. So if you're not looking to make any moves like taking out new loans, buying a house, buying a car, any major stuff, there are ways you can actually freeze your credit bureau report, so no one can open a new account and no one can make any changes without you knowing. It's sort of like, consider it like two-factor authentication for your credit. Pretty important stuff. And we are going to have a whole topic on credit down the line. So let me bring up. I had a couple things I wanted to show you guys. How are we doing on time? We got a half hour left. These are some things I found on Reddit. On Reddit's personal finance. Hi, Augustus. Welcome in. How are you, my friend? There is no late to this class, you know. And like I mentioned, I will be putting this stuff on YouTube. I'm not sure if I'm going to just throw it up there as is or if I'm going to try and edit it down, but all this stuff will be available as a VOD on Twitch for the next however long they give you now, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But I will be putting it up on YouTube eventually as well because I don't want to lose this. I don't want this info lost to time. So let's take a look at a couple things here. I just picked out a few that caught my eye off of Reddit's personal finance group, which is a very sad, a very sad place to browse. A lot of people in some fucked up situations over there. Let's go over to this other view for a second. Here we go. Okay. This was one that made me happy. So should I buy it no matter the price because it's long term? As a teen with $220 to invest, I'm considering buying an index fund like VTI since I don't want to keep a constant eye on it. I'm considering waiting for VTI's price to drop below 200 again before I make a purchase, but I'm wondering if it really matters in the long run at which price I buy it if I plan on holding on to it for a while. This kid is well ahead of the game. First of all, investing in index funds, very smart. You don't have to pick individual stocks. It is literally like autopilot for your investments, and you're basically betting on the entire stock market. The beautiful thing about investing nowadays is there's so many instruments out there. You can go the entire market. You can go down to industries. You don't have to pick individual stocks anymore. And I actually recommend, unless you have a really good reason to, not to pick individual stocks because you can buy ETFs that give you the power of a mutual fund and you don't have to manage it. They have professional managers whose job it is to take care of this shit and make investment decisions. And they're much lower cost than a mutual fund. You can trade them like a stock, so they're very liquid. And you can get into as narrow or as broad a sector as you want. You can say, I want to buy the energy industry. I want to buy, European stocks. I want to buy, Australian chocolate producers. And there will be an ETF out there for that particular segment of the market. And you have someone who's an expert in that market segment making the buys and sells every day. And all you do is say, here's my $1,000, put it into energy. So this kid's going into a broad index fund with $220. He's talking about market timing here. Yeah, Tim Tam's rage, exactly. Glad someone caught it. The answer I would give this kid is no. Don't wait for the price to drop. That's the type of investing I teach. If you are investing long term, if you're actually investing and not gambling, then you don't want to time the market. You don't want to try and time the market. You can get very precise and be like, I've been watching this stock for a year and I know like it goes up and down in this range. No, you know what? Like if you're into investing, you want to learn to trade and do that shit, do it as a hobby, do it because you're into it. Investing is easy. You just put your money and you leave it alone. That's it. And so this kid, I would say, who gives a shit if it goes down to 200? Just buy it now. More time in the market is better. You're gonna have more price appreciation the longer you have it in there. So you're probably gonna like buy this and sit on it for 40 years. Just fucking buy it. But this kid, it makes me happy to see this. A lot of these stories are not happy ones. Let's look at this one, which is fucking terrible. Bankruptcy or collections? I'm $75,000 in debt. Can we, for Stock Market Day, can we watch Michael Reeves' video on stocks? Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so $75K in debt. That's a fucking, that's a lot of debt. That's fucking substantial. This guy is thinking about bankruptcy. He consolidated all his credit card debt into 2 personal loans. All right, that's called a credit card consolidation loan. You know who sells credit card consolidation loans? Predatory companies that hire telemarketing firms to cold call people and roll them into fucking very high APR loans. I've never missed a payment on my debt, so I have a 780 credit score. That's positive, and nothing is in collections. I want his fish to invest for me. Since October, I'm working 2 full-time jobs so I can make $100K a year to afford this, but this isn't sustainable. For 6 days a week, I'm working from 8 a.m. till 7 a.m. the next day. I sleep for an hour between jobs and take 30-minute or hour naps on my lunch breaks. I'm getting 3.5 hours of sleep throughout the day. Then I sleep all day on my 1 day off to catch up. This isn't healthy, and it's only possible right now because I'm only 27, so my body can still handle some abuse. No way in hell I'd be doing this if I was 40. If I quit my second job, I'll only be making $60K, bringing home $3,200 a month. My rent is $2K. Minimum debt payment is $2.5. See the problem here already? This is not tenable. He cannot survive with this. And the only positive thing I'm picking up on here is that he knows this. He knows he's in a fucking terrible situation. He's trying to hang on to a little bit of cash after he pays all his bills. He's considering bankruptcy. And he's also considering letting his bills go to collection under the assumption that he could then negotiate down and pay less than than the face value of his debt. These are both bad options. Unfortunately, though, given that he's in these 2 consolidation loans with pretty high APRs, he doesn't have a lot of options here. Listen to the edit. People were asking, hey, how do you rack up all this debt? The debt's because I dated a girl for 8 years and gift giving is my love language. So I ran up all my credit cards without telling her in an attempt to give her a lavish life. Now we've been broken up for almost 3 years and haven't spoken since. The debt was being juggled across 5 credit cards originally, but less than 12 months ago, I finally consolidated them into 2 personal loans. One is $1,100 a month, one is $1,400. One is a 3-month loan at 18%. The other is 48 months at 17%. Bruce knows her. Wow. So I don't know. I don't even know what to say. This guy put himself in a very, very bad situation. You would have thought that he would have stopped well before 75K. I mean, that's a lot of money to spend on somebody. Poor bastard is right. In this case, bankrupt, like this is a situation where you really need to ask someone for help if you can. He needs to do something. He was talking about getting hired for a single job paying $100K plus. He's been trying for a year. He doesn't mention what industry he's in. I don't know how feasible that is, but he also mentions in another post he can't ask his family for help because he's embarrassed that he spent this money like this. And his family thought he was saving up all his money all this time. So they thought he was saving up to buy a house. Meanwhile, he not only spent all his money, he spent $75,000 more. I'm really sad for this guy because he probably the best option he has is to go into bankruptcy, which will absolutely wreck your fucking life. You will not be able to fucking borrow money for a very long time. However, sometimes it is the only option. It will at least get him out of this situation, and then he'll have a very long road to get himself back. He's 27. He'll be at least 34 before he'll be able to fucking buy anything on credit ever again. And that's if he doesn't have any more missteps. It's a bad situation. I bring this to your attention to say, this is something that this guy should have caught a long way before and should have stopped. And this is, impulse, right? This guy was in love. He was blinded by his love or his lust for this woman, and really put himself in a hole. And guess what? He found out the hard way. It didn't buy him love. At the end of the day, he's still broken up for 3 years now. Sad scenario. So just goes to show you, death by 1,000 cuts, right? He didn't spend $75,000 all at once. This was a whole bunch of little presents and vacations, and I got you some jewelry for your birthday and blah, blah, blah. And exactly right, Bobs. You do not want to ever put yourself in a bad situation for someone else. This especially goes with co-signing loans. I hear this story so many times. Someone, a family member, an old girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, can't sign for a loan, and they ask you to co-sign. and they make you feel like an asshole if you can't. And it's usually for something they need. It's not like they want a loan to go on vacation. It's like they need a car to get to work, or they need to buy a house. I can tell you the fastest way to not be friends with somebody or to be estranged from your family is to be involved in a loan with them. I would highly, highly, highly recommend never co-signing a loan for anyone. It will take you down with them. And usually if someone is asking you to co-sign a loan for them, it means they did not handle their own finances well enough to get by. And there's a high probability that they will take you down with them. Now, that being said, there are some situations where, you know your family, you know your friends, but I will tell you, I've seen this work out very poorly many, 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 many times. Use caution. Do not attach your financial health to someone else. I would rather see you lend them money, like give them money so they could make the pay, make the loan on their own than co-signing. Because once you co-sign, you're on the hook. Also, if you ever loan a family or friend money, consider it gone. You'll be lucky if you get paid back, but I would just consider it a gift. If it were up to you, go to default and offer 30 cents on the dollar. So that is, Bruce, what he's proposing here. The problem is that's not guaranteed. And the other problem is, one, it's going to destroy your credit anyway. So you'll probably wind up exactly where you would credit-wise as you would with the bankruptcy if you let $75,000 of debt go to collections. And keep in mind, how do collections work, right? So a debt goes into collections. The original company is trying to collect from you for a while, and they're unable to. And then they are going to sell that debt to someone else and sell it again. That company's going to sell it again. Eventually, by the time you get to the point where they're willing to take 30 cents on the dollar, your credit has been destroyed. And I would argue it might be as long as bankruptcy, Bruce. For that amount and not paying, I don't know. That's not something that you're just going to be able to erase. So I don't know the specifics of which of those scenarios would hit you worse. I will say bankruptcy at least is a legal solution, and they can't come after you again for that. Whereas debt collectors are some of the scummiest fucking people on the planet. And again, the rules might be different. You guys are in Australia. I am absolutely, I know nothing about the Australian financial systems or laws, so it could be a very different scenario where you live than where we are. And in this case, what I would recommend to this person is get a lawyer. Get a bankruptcy lawyer and go over your options, because the bankruptcy lawyer is the one who's going to be able to tell you for sure what your better option is and how to come out of it at the other side. But the real advice here is don't let yourself get into this situation. And those consolidation loans, I mean, if he got consolidation loans, look at those APRs, 18 and 17 fucking %. Those are fucking ridiculous. So what were his credit card payments? That was a step in the right direction. He must have been paying 20+% on his credit cards. Which is surprising given that he had a 780 credit score. He should have been able to get much lower rates on cards and pay the minimum, he's out of options now. One of the reasons we're talking about budgeting and thinking about your finances and facing things like this is so you don't run out of options like this gentleman has. You want to keep options and give yourself some room to maneuver. You wouldn't let someone give you that much stuff, though. Some people are freaking leeches. Madge, I 100% agree. That's a whole other story. This is such a sad story from like just a story perspective, like from an emotional perspective. This poor guy, my heart breaks for him. And I hope he finds a way out of this. This is another fucking sad story. Again, another story about letting someone else wreck your finances. This is a married couple. So the author is a 37-year-old female asking for help taking control of personal finance. I was like, okay, this is interesting. This is exactly what we're talking about on this. And then the curveballs start. I'm totally overwhelmed and irrationally angry at my husband, 43-year-old male, who never met a dollar he didn't want to spend or throw down at a craps table. Now, once we hear the rest of the story, I would say irrationally angry. I would say, no, you have every fucking right to be angry, and I would divorce this piece of shit ASAP. Last year, we took out a HELOC. That's a home equity line of credit. It's basically a second mortgage on your home. So what you do is you cash out the equity you have in your house, and they give you cash. It's essentially a mortgage. It's securitized by your home. If you don't pay your home equity line of credit back, they take your house, right? So they took out a HELOC with $100,000 to redo bathrooms and kitchen. They used $30,000 to pay off credit card debt. Then my lovely husband used the rest of it as a personal slush fund to pay for his gambling addiction. As you can imagine, this is a huge issue. I don't know if our marriage is going to survive. I honestly don't think so, but we're in marriage counseling and trying to work through it. We have a child. I'm trying to do right by her, but I'm hurt and just keep finding more and more financial infidelity, which doesn't bode well. This is an interesting part here. When we met, I was broke and temping doing a useless master's degree. I was making $14 an hour. When we moved in together, I was making $50,000 a year. Since he made more, $60,000 a year, I just put my whole check into our joint account and let him handle the bills. Fast forward 12 years, and I make $200,000. He makes $70,000. So wow, that's a reversal here. She's making significantly more than he, almost triple. We've continued down this path of him managing everything. I work a ton, do all the housework. He manages the household business. We equally parent our kid. I have severe ADHD and struggled with deadlines when I was younger, so it worked out for us. Now it doesn't. I won't go into details about the bullshit I found over the years. I think I would have a shit ton more money saved and socked away for the future if we split. I adamantly stated I no longer want him touching my money. I now have a direct deposit into a solo account and write a check for the mortgage, phone, and bills like that. I'm going to work on paying off the credit cards in my name. I'm still contributing to my 401k and my kid's 529. That's a college savings plan. And the 401k, if anyone doesn't have those out of the US, is a retirement savings plan, tax advantaged. And removed him as an authorized user. But where should I start? I keep finding out about cards he opened in my name I didn't know about, a bank account he won't let me see. He says he's no longer gambling. I don't believe him. I feel like such a goddamn idiot. I hate myself for trusting him. Need to get moves. All right, so fuck this poor woman. I mean, blaming herself. First of all, she has every right to be angry at this piece of shit. I'm not going to say, should she have left him before this or whatever. They have a child together, which complicates things. But she is at least making the right moves now. She is taking him off of accounts. She is making things only in her name. This again, when you couple your finances to someone else, this is the kind of shit that can happen. You would hope that a married couple would know each other well enough to not run into this kind of scenario. It sounds like this guy is, has a lot of issues, and the fact that he's hiding shit from her, opening accounts in her name, that's felony level. So she could probably get this guy arrested if she wanted to, but I understand she doesn't want to hurt her child during this whole process, so she's kind of fucked. But the bottom line is she is now saddling, trying to pay back this home equity line. She's got a bunch of bills to pay, and this guy is going and gambling all the money away. Yeah, the marriage is doomed. The marriage should be doomed. Should be doomed. She needs to run, absolutely. How can he? Well, you know what? She does need to sign Madge, but the thing is, if you go online, there's no signature. Like, if you have someone's personal info, this is how identity theft happens as well. If you have someone's social security number, if you have someone's address, if you can pass the identity verification thing, which is basically like, which of these 3 streets did you live on? Which color was your first car, So that's stuff that a stranger might not know about you, but you're pretty sure your spouse does. And if they needed to know, they could probably ask you. Welcome in, Swag. What's going on? Hi again, Swag. I love how Swag is always late for raids. It's actually, it always makes me smile. I'm not saying that like in a dick way. I truly mean it. You're the worst. So you can open up an account in someone's name if you can pass these online verifications. Now, the person who, and this is why I mentioned before, it's very important to freeze your fucking credit. Because if you have your credit frozen, they can't do this. But if your credit is unlocked, anybody who has that information, who can pass those questions, can go on. I can go on American Express right now, apply for a card. I pop in your fucking name, your address, your date of birth, your social, all that shit. Boop, 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 boop. If it has a good credit history attached, which for this woman making $200,000 a year, she probably has very good credit. Boom, pre-approved, and now your card's getting mailed out. That is something, he would be at the house to be able to intercept that mail, and he would have all her information. So yeah, it's much more common with a family member who has this info. I've heard of parents doing this for kids. Yeah, so freeze your credit, because that way no one can open an account up until you unfreeze the credit. And to do that, you have to call up the credit agency, and that level of authentication is much higher than these credit card or banking sites. I'll tell a quick story. I've talked in the past about going to DEF CON, the hacker convention in Vegas. And when I was there in 99, a lot has changed since 99, but I was by far the most interesting presentation that I listened to was a guy who was telling a story of an identity theft ring and how they operated. And it was fascinating because what these guys would do, they were actually from the UK. They would fly over to the US. They would pick a city. They would fly into the city. They would go and look in a phone book, and they would find doctors and lawyers and other kind of like white collar professionals. And they would call these guys up and they would say, hey, we're calling from Who's Who, 40 under 40, whatever, business journal. And we want to do a profile on you. Can we take down some information so we can put you in? And, they would fluff these guys up, fluff their ego, be like, you're such a great, lawyer, such a great doctor. We want to put you in this book. And they would, they would get their address, they would get their name, they would get a whole bunch of shit information from them. They would then go and rent an apartment. First they would get ID. So there was a website. And again, this has become harder since 99, but they would go and order an ID and get an ID for the guy. Then they would rent an apartment, so they had an address. They would go to the bank, open up a savings account or checking account. And then they would wait a little while, and within a week, they would go and put their names on like these junk mail lists. And within a couple of weeks, without fail, they would start getting credit card offers in the mail at the address, at the place they were renting. And yeah, you couldn't do it this way nowadays. A lot of it has changed, but this was shocking to me even back then. And they would take the credit card offers. They would go for the highest APRs, the worst offer, the one that you as an actual user of the credit card would never want. But the thing is, the worse the offer, the less the credit card company really vets it. They're vetting you when you get their low interest card, that has all these perks. If you're going for like the 28% credit card with a $500 credit limit, they don't give a shit. They'll give that out to anybody. Those are the cards they give out to like college kids on campus and shit. So they would know which credit card companies reported to which credit agencies, and they would do 3 per agency. So 9 cards total. They knew that was the cutoff. Any more than that, it would trigger red flags. They would go ahead and apply for the cards. The cards would come. They would come with those courtesy checks. They would write themselves the courtesy checks for however much the credit limit of the card was, go to the bank, deposit into their account, come back next day, take all the money out, and fucking leave. And they would come back and do it next month at another city. And these guys were making a shit ton of money doing this. And it was fairly low risk for them, because if you think about it, the only real point of contact they had with a person would be when they were renting the apartment and when they went to the bank to open the account, and they had ID with their picture on it and all the info. So there was nothing for the bank to really look at, that to catch them. And the bank would be like, okay, we're going to mail your checkbook. We're going to mail your cards, credit card companies, they wouldn't care. They're sending in these applications. They're mailing the card to the address. Again, you can't do that shit today, but it just goes to show you how if someone calls and gets your info, they can do a lot of damage. And so be very careful about your personal information. Even something that seems, like it's not a big deal can be piecemeal accumulated, and someone could paint a profile on you. So you give a bit of information out here, a bit over here, a bit over here. Someone who's paying attention could take all 3 of those pieces and put something together on you that you never meant to give away. Yeah, too expensive to rent an apartment. Yeah, nowadays the whole scam would be fucked. All right, here's another thing. This goes into kind of the importance of an emergency fund and how these problems we're talking about are not low income problems. These can happen to anyone. This guy bought a $1.5 million house in Seattle. He was a Meta engineer, aka Facebook. So, programmer, making a shit ton of money. Monthly payment, $8,500. This guy was making some bank. The unexpected happened a few months ago when I was laid off from my job at Meta, where he was a staff level engineer. I really need help because I depleted most of my cash in the down payment for the house. Can't afford the monthly payment anymore without a job. I've applied to more than 50 companies. I've put out more than 500 applications. I can't get an offer for the life of me. Next month will be the first month I won't be able to make my mortgage payment, and I'm terrified. I've thought about selling my house and moving in with friends. I've lost so much money in house value, I can't justify it. Again, the guy is operating in a panic mode now because he's out of cash. You know, I don't know. He doesn't mention how long he says a few months ago. So he might have had an emergency fund and blew through it. But this just goes to show, like, just because you have a really good job, you're making money, you know, things can change on a dime. You always have to think in the back of your head, like, how am I protecting myself against this shit? And the advice that this person got was to look at the house as an asset, right? Not only as an asset that you could sell, which he says, you know, he doesn't want to justify because he's going to take a wash on the sale, but to rent it out, right? And I think what he wound up doing was finding a way to rent this house out as corporate housing because it was close to Meta and all the other, you know, .com companies and shit in Seattle. And he was able to rent it out for $10,000 a month. So I think at the end of the day, he wound up not only making his monthly payment, but actually, you know, pocketing a little bit of money that he could use for his other expenses to take the pressure off. So it had a happy ending. But it just goes to show, like, he wasn't even thinking along those lines. Like, I could rent the house out. He was in a panic mode. I can't make my payment. I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do. This kind of shit, this level of stress can put blinders on you, can tunnel vision you. You don't know what to do. And part of the reason we talk about planning so much and being aware of your finances is so you don't get put in that kind of situation. So at least when something bad happens, you can sit back and you have a breath to rationally look at things and evaluate. And to be honest, at the end of the day, if he wasn't able to rent that house, your only option is to sell it, man. You have to get out from under that mortgage payment. This is exactly what happened, by the way, in the housing crisis of 2008. What happened was people got placed in mortgages with adjustable rates, and they were sold, you know, they were not properly informed, or they did not properly understand that those rates could jump up significantly in the future. And so they were paying a mortgage payment that they were comfortable with, but when those rates jumped up, all of a sudden they couldn't pay that mortgage payment. And because they didn't have any equity in their houses, they couldn't refinance. So they were basically underwater on these mortgages, and they had no choice but to foreclose. Even if they sold the house at that point, they wouldn't have made enough money on the sale to pay down the mortgage. That's why people lost their houses. That's why so many people got fucked, because they bought more house than they could afford. And I have advocated for so long, I think a lawyer and an accountant should be required to be present at every fucking home mortgage closing, because this is by far the largest financial transaction most of us will ever do in our lifetimes, is buying a house. And to not have people advise you on the terms of a 30-year plus contract you're signing for hundreds of thousands of dollars, I'm shocked that there were no calls in Congress to change the laws around closing ceremonies, you know. It was sad to see, because what happened was you had a lot of, unscrupulous mortgage brokers who said, hey, we can put you, oh, you can afford a $200,000 house. Well, here's a $500,000 house. Don't you want this house? And the guy would say, yeah, I want this house, but I can't afford that. Well, we can give you a mortgage. What if I told you you could afford it? Your monthly payment would only be $1,000. Meanwhile, that's a teaser rate. And in 7 years, that's going to jump up, and your payment now is going to be $5,000. People didn't understand what they were signing. And normally, if you had equity in your house, you would say, let me refinance. You would have been able to get another mortgage at a fixed rate or a lower rate, something you could afford. But in these cases, these people also did not put down money. It's the mortgage brokers who were accepting these terms. They were accepting shit credit. They were accepting no money down. But somebody, I don't put the fault on the consumer, but somebody should have been involved to tell them this is a fucking horrible idea. Do you realize what you're signing here? Do you realize the handcuffs you're putting yourself in? Because if anything goes wrong here, you're going to be fucked. And there was no one around to tell them that. And people, you had all the horrible stories coming out of 2008 and 2009. In Aussie, if you paid $1.5 million a year ago, you could sell now for $2 million. Yeah, tunnel vision indeed. And yeah, more regulators as opposed to bringing in lawyers. Well, Bruce, how would you regulate it though? I think there are reasons for those mortgages, for those types of mortgages. There are scenarios where you want to get an adjustable rate mortgage. So the fact that a mortgage broker is able to offer that to you doesn't mean that you don't want to get it. Like it shouldn't be illegal to offer those types of mortgages because they're not predatory by their very nature. It's predatory to take somebody in a particular situation who doesn't understand a very complex financial instrument and match them together. And that's where an accountant and a lawyer would be able to work in your best interest. A lot of states do require lawyers for closing just to protect the interests of the house buyer, to make sure that they're not getting fucked over. Because I don't know if, like, when I bought my house, the fucking paperwork was this thick. It was like 2 inches of fucking documents to read through, and I fucking read through them, and I can't even tell you I understood everything in those. It was a lot of fucking shit, and I worked on a mortgage bond desk at the time, so like I knew probably more than your average person, and I still had trouble with these documents. So I don't know if I don't like regulation, because regulation takes away options. I like people understanding the options, and maybe you put restrictions on who can do certain things. But for example, if you took away adjustable rate mortgages, the housing development industry goes away, because the whole reason people are able to buy, fund these developments and stuff is by getting these very low cost mortgages with a teaser rate that they're going to be out of by the time there's a time and place for them. For an individual homeowner, probably not. I knew a guy who was pretty wealthy. He used adjustable rate mortgages to great effect. But he had the equity in his house. He knew what he was doing. He knew how to get out of it if he had to. And he had that option. These people didn't. And I think, at the very least, someone should have been there to explain to them what they were signing. Maybe it's, maybe you have you have to have like a very easy to understand term sheet that everyone has to look at, where it breaks it down into very, very basic fucking English, and you get away from the 7,000 page legal contract. I don't know the answer, but teach a man to fish, yes. And finally, we have someone here who is 32, $120,000 salary, $5,900, almost $6,000 take-home pay a month. Nice situation. Currently contributing 6% to the employer 401k, who matches 4%. That's a retirement account. No debt other than a 2.8% mortgage. Amazing fucking rate. Like, I think that's just about the lowest fucking mortgage rate that you could have anytime in recent history. Not only that, they're only paying half the mortgage. The partner pays the other half. Only their name is on the title and mortgage. I live in a high cost of living area. I know I need to open an IRA. I'm thinking Roth. Should I decrease my 401k contribution to 4% and max out the IRA? I currently have $33,000 between my current employer 401k and 401k for my previous employer. Minimal cash savings. Should I roll these together or roll the old one in IRA? I know I'm behind for my age. I want to understand what my next best moves. Any advice is appreciated. So here's someone who could benefit from some information on retirement accounts, because they're kind of they're mixed up a little bit. First of all, retirement accounts, for the most part, act the same way. Like, if you contribute to a 401k and you contribute to a Roth, the only real differences are going to be, one, how much money you can put into them, two, the investments that might be offered. But if they're both, tax advantage accounts that have the same kind of tax advantage, putting $1 into one versus the other is not really going to matter at the end of the day. What your eventual goal is to match, or is to max out all of your potential retirement accounts. So you have a 401k. Most private employers in the U.S. offer 401k. If you work for a union, you might have a pension. My parents were teachers. They had an annuity. There's a lot of different retirement programs out there, but generally speaking, if you work for a company, a corporation or something, they're going to offer you a 401k. Roth is a whole different aspect. Roth is the greatest gift the U.S. government ever gave to taxpayers. And Roth comes in IRAs, and now they also have Roth 401ks. I'll touch on the difference very briefly. You have what's called tax deferred and tax free. Tax deferred means I put my money in today, and I I've already paid taxes on the money I'm putting in, right? And later on, when I take the money out, I just pay taxes on the gains. The 401k, you can put money in pre-tax. There's different stuff with that. But essentially, the goal is I'm not going to need that money until I retire. And when I retire, I'm going to be in a lower tax bracket because I'm going to be making less money. So all the gains that have accumulated in this account, I can now take out at a smaller tax rate. Whereas Roth accounts are amazing because they say you put your money in the Roth and you don't have to pay any taxes on those gains at all. So those are always after-tax contributions. You've already paid the taxes on the money you're putting in. Any accumulation of wealth in that account is completely tax-free. Now, that's assuming the government never rescinds that. I think there would be mass riots if they did, but it's always possible, right? They can change the tax law. Basically, for this person's situation, Roth accounts also have income limits for when you can contribute to them. So at her salary, I don't think she would be able to open a Roth IRA unless she did a rollover, which is, this is all stuff we'll get into in the retirement account episode. There's a lot of nuance here and a lot of, mistakes that can be made. But the bottom line is you want to fund these accounts as much as you can. And if you have a 401k, great. You're putting money in pre-tax to your 401k, which is great because it's reducing the amount of taxes you're paying on your paycheck. Money comes off the top. And a lot of companies do a match. So you should at minimum, put in up to the match percentage because that's free money, right? So her employer matches 4%. If she puts in 4%, she gets 4% matched from her employer for free. You might as well take the free money. After that, though, I would tell her, one, I don't like that she doesn't have any savings. She should definitely build up some cash savings for an emergency fund. And two, I would just start putting as much as she can. If she wants to catch up on retirement, plug as much money as possible into that 401k. If she doesn't have an IRA, she can open up some accounts and she can wind up getting her money into a Roth account through a conversion. That's a topic for another day. But this is another instance of setting your priorities, right? Her priority should be the emergency fund, and then she should be looking at maxing out her retirement accounts. And she is far from maxing out the 401k. The amount, it's around, what's the 2023? Car might know this, but I think it's 22,500 you can put in to a 401k pre-tax, and then you can also put in after-tax dollars up to like almost 50,000. That's a lot of runway. Most people are not maxing out their 401ks. Before you would even need to think about a Roth or an IRA account, Roth or otherwise, I would probably say keep funding that 401k. But again, tax stuff is a whole different discussion, and actually, we're going to have Car on a future episode to talk about some tax stuff, which will be very interesting because I think I'm going to learn something on that episode as well. But yeah, this is not a bad situation to be in, not a bad question to ask, right? Like this is someone who's thinking along the right ways, knows that they have to catch up a little bit with retirement savings. And that's the important part here. That's, again, I stress time being on your side. The younger you are, 32, yeah, it's a little late to start saving for retirement, but it's not that bad. It's better than 42. It's better than 52. The more time you have, the more this money is going to sit around and grow for you. And you cannot get that time back. So, if you're sitting there thinking like, oh, I'm 25, I don't need to start thinking about this stuff right now. You're robbing yourself of thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Because if you start funding these accounts now, or the earlier the better, it will pay enormous dividends down the line. And that's the one, if you take nothing away from all this shit, take that away. Save early and start thinking about retirement, even if your retirement is 40 plus years away. It seems like the most distant thing. You don't even have to worry about it. You don't even have a job yet. You're still in school. Guess what? Try and save money, because you put $100 in the bank and let it sit there for 40 years. It's going to be more than $100 by the time you take it out. Whereas if you don't worry about the shit until you're 40 and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, I should start thinking about retirement, you're going to be drastically underfunded. Save early, save often, fuck Microsoft Word. We all need little Clippy to come by and be like, hey, um, are you looking to save some money? In the US, are employer 401k contributions compulsory? No, they are not. It's considered a benefit. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't even think employers have to offer a retirement account. Now, if you're self-employed, there are also retirement accounts. So if you're self-employed, you're not going to have a 401k, right? That's an employer-sponsored plan. There are things called SEP IRAs and Clover 401k. I think they're called Clover. There are accounts specifically designed for self-employed people. So if you're listening to all this saying, fuck, I don't work for an employer, none of this applies to me, you can still open an IRA. IRA stands for individual retirement account. Anyone can open an IRA. It's a much smaller contribution limit, though. It's around like $6,500, I think, for this year. But definitely you should have some retirement account and start funding it and put money in. And the nice part is, with IRAs and 401ks, if you had an emergency, I don't recommend this except in absolutely dire circumstances, but you can borrow against that money. A lot of employers will let you take out a 401k loan, and basically you're paying yourself back. So any of the interest you're paying on that loan goes back into your account. The downside is you're removing that money from being able to be invested. So 9 times out of 10, if you do the math, you're much better off leaving the retirement funds alone and finding other sources. But if you, say, for example, had like a life-threatening medical procedure you needed and you just didn't have the money, you can take money out of your IRA penalty-free for things like buying your first home, for things like education expenses, for things like medical hardship. So not only are you building up this retirement nest egg, but it's also can act as like a very, very last resort pool of money that you can draw off of. In Australia, 401k is called superannuation, and employers are required to contribute 10.5%. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Now, Bruce, is that a match, or is that like even if you don't put in any money, they have to put 10.5% of your salary in? I mean, on the surface, that sounds good, but I would think if they did that in the US, what would happen is the salary for your position would drop down by about 10.5%. The next person they hire is going to be making, a little bit less, because everything will, water will always find its level, right? So if you tell a company, hey, you have to pay, 10 grand into this guy's retirement account, they're going to be like, okay, we'll find ways to get that back. That's my cynical way of looking at the world. But absolutely, 401ks are super good to have, Car, or the equivalent account if your company doesn't offer one. I like 401ks a lot more than pensions and annuities. Annuities are something you might hear older people talk about. They were very in vogue years and years ago. They are terrible, terrible financial instruments nowadays. They're opaque. There's no visibility into the fees. Excuse me. They're very expensive for what they are, and I don't like them. But they used to be like the big thing, like for saving. Like you would pass down annuities to your family. And as a matter of fact, the most recent annuity I've seen was a family member had opened one up for their grandkids and had passed it down. And now the grandchildren were wondering, like, what do I do with this? Do I cash it out? Do I do whatever? And after looking at it, we were like, yeah, you should probably cash it out and put it into like a better account. Like this is just not a good instrument. So there's a lot of financial products out there, and there's a lot of shitty financial products out there. There's a lot of stuff that is predatory. There's a lot of stuff that people will try and sell you on that you don't need except for very specific scenarios. One example is using life insurance as a tax advantaged savings vehicle. So in the US, at least, there are some very complicated loopholes in the tax code that essentially allow you to fund a permanent life insurance policy and then access that money as a loan later in life, a loan that you will never pay back, that will be paid back by the death benefit of the insurance when you die.
So it's a way that you can stash money away and it will grow. And when you stop working, you can start pulling this money out, and then you die and it gets paid off, and your heirs are not saddled with any of it or anything like that. It's a great product if you have a very specific scenario. You're already maxing out every other potential tax advantage account you might have. You're generally very, very high net worth. You're doing it for, specific estate planning purposes. But I've seen them try and sell this shit to regular people, and it's a terrible fucking product. It's not a good life insurance product for a regular person. It's not a good savings product for a regular person. But they still try and sell it. Please don't become an insurance salesman. I will not become an insurance salesman. Don't worry. But insurance is something that you should also be thinking about. We'll cover that in another episode as well. All right. So we're just about at the time for the stream. I wanted to keep these, kind of short and sweet. So I will stick around for a few minutes if anyone has any questions. But let me bring back my beautiful PowerPoint presentation here. We talked about, if anyone had arrived after the presentation, these were some of the topics we have on tap coming up. We have, the process of going through and setting your financial goals, something that makes sense for you and your situation. We have checking and savings accounts and the advantages and disadvantages of various types, retirement planning, going through what we were just talking about with 401ks, IRAs, HSA accounts. There's a million retirement vehicles out there, and it's a good idea to at least understand a little bit about them so you know where to aim for. How to get started with investing. Again, this is get rich slow. There's two ways that you buy things in the stock market. You invest or you gamble. There's nothing wrong with gambling. If you have money set aside as fun money, you want to risk it. You want to take a little gamble. If you want to take a small percentage of your portfolio and put it in a high risk vehicle, by all means, especially when you're young. There's no reason you can't have a risky portion of your portfolio, but you need to understand the difference between investing and gambling, and you need to gamble with intent and with understanding what you're doing and not think that you're investing. Because I see a lot of kids with a Robinhood account who think they're fucking investing when they're just day trading, trying to fucking hit a lotto number, essentially. Debt management, how to not wind up like some of these horror stories that we just read about. Credit scores, what they are, how they work, how to protect your credit, how to protect from identity theft, how to use and not use credit cards, when do they make sense. Everyone should have at least a couple of credit cards, and I'll explain why, and I'll explain the ones to get where they don't cost you anything and you can actually make a little bit of money off the back of the bank. And guess who you're making that money off of as well? The poor suckers who have the 20% plus cards and the $75,000 balances. The bank is selling them the shitty cards. You're going to get the good card, and you're going to have the bank pay you instead of you paying them. Understanding insurance on a very high level. And don't worry, Bruce, I am not licensed to sell insurance in any state. Real estate, renting versus buying, what makes sense, when does it make sense to think about buying, when does it not? And taxes, everyone's favorite topic. Tomorrow is the tax filing deadline here in the US. So I'm sure everyone has either gone out on extension or has their tax returns ready to go down to the post office. Once again, stay in touch. All my socials you can find on my Linktree. I was going to put them all up here, but fucking Discord has that ugly ass Discord link. It's terrible. And I didn't want it messing up my slides. So if you go to my Linktree, Linktree/Bites and Beers, you'll see my Discord, you'll see my Twitter, my Twitch. You guys, I hope you know the Twitch, unless someone forced you at gunpoint to go watch this stream. And YouTube. Again, we'll be posting these videos after the fact. And we have the moneymondays.tv website. This is going to be kind of the central place for this stream. We're going to have past episodes will be linked on there. We're going to have the schedule for future episodes. There are links on there to submit questions and topics. If you have something that you want to talk about, a specific question you want me to address. Again, it's all anonymous. I don't care. I don't, you can write me anything. We'll talk about it like we talked about those Reddit posts, and we can go over stuff, and maybe I can fill in some info. And also, more importantly, there's a feedback link on that website. I would really, really appreciate if all of you could go to the moneymondays.tv site and just fill out the feedback form. It's also anonymous. I want to make this better. It's my first time ever doing anything like this. So I hope it went well. I hope you guys found the information useful, and I really want to improve and fix anything that was not good. So if you guys could go in there, it has questions about what you liked about the presentation, what you didn't like about it, any ways I could improve, any suggestions you have. I would really, really, really be grateful if you guys could take a second and fill out that feedback form, because the only way I'm going to get better at this is if you tell me what you thought about it. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in. This was a blast. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I hope it was useful to some of you. Maki just put the Discord link up there. Again, we're going to have the Money Club. I'm going to go, as soon as I'm off of this stream, I'm going to go set that channel up. It might take me a little bit to get the bot to be able to do the role assignment. So in the meantime, if you want access to that role, just come into Discord and ping me and let me know, and I will add you in. It's going to be a private channel, so only the people who ask to be in it will be able to see it. It's going to be a place where, just like all the fitness channels that you see out there that are very useful and have helped me on my fitness journey, especially I'll give a shout out to Rage for the fitness channel on her Discord. Is a great group of people, and I want this to be the same impact for finances. I want people to be able to go there and, ask questions, help each other out, talk about problems or successes, and celebrate as we hit goals together. So I would love to see you over there. And again, can't wait for the YouTube video. I'll get that up as soon as possible. Again, maybe I won't edit it. That'll be really easy to just throw it up there. If I edit it, it'd probably take 2 to 3 years to get it up. But I had a blast doing this. Also, I'm going to put a poll up real quick if you guys could answer this, because this has been a big question for me, is how often to do these streams. I do not want to do them every week, because it's just, I want to have time to prepare the presentations and whatnot and have it be, well thought out. So I would say the max I would look to do would be twice a month. Right now, I'm planning to do them once a month, but I'm going to put a quick poll up here if I could find the right little button. Where did it go? Manage poll? Yeah. New poll. How often should I do these streams? And we'll say 1x a month, 2x a month, and we'll call it 3x a month. Because there is a lot of stuff to cover. So let's throw that up there. If you guys could vote, we don't want to stress our boy. Maybe do them as often as your Friday night happy hour streams. That's a low blow, Bruce. That's a low blow. Quality better than quantity. I agree. I was thinking once a month. The only reason I might think twice a month, there's a lot of material, and I do want to get through some of it. So we'll see. But yeah, if you want to vote on there, we'll let that hang for a minute. I guess I will see if there's anyone else to raid out to. I've never done a raid after a stream like this. I've never done a stream like this, so the passive aggressive meter is going through the roof. Oh, you know what? Why don't we all go? Why don't we head on over to? Let's see. We got Miss Mimo playing Spiritfarer. Oh man, I've been wanting to check that game out. I hear that's a really, really sad game. I don't know if I can play that game. Are we down to go see Miss Mimo and play some Spiritfarer? I want to drop you guys off with somebody that most of you know. Does anyone have any suggestions? It's so emotional bites. Yeah, Rage. I read the description, and I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. Yeah, let's go cheer Mimo up. We can all come off of a financial education and go over and ask Mimo, if she did her taxes and how she's doing. Emotional damage. Damn. Okay, let's see what the results of the poll was. I know everyone is dying to find out. Should we end it? We'll see the results. Once a month. Excellent. and that was unanimous. Okay. The people have spoken. So we will do the next Money Mondays will be in the month of May. And again, the list of topics I showed you were not necessarily in order. So if you do want a particular topic, if you think there's something timely, feel free to hit me up and request it, or you can use that the submit a question and topic form on the website. All right, let me get the raid started. Guys, this was a ton of fun. I really do appreciate all you guys coming out and spending some time with me. I'm really excited about where this is going to go and some of the stuff we can do. So thank you for making this first time a success. And I hope we can get everyone to a point where you feel good about your finances and not like you're being held hostage by them, because I know how that feels. It sucks, and I don't want anyone to feel that way. All right. Well, without further ado, yeah, just came to see Bruce in a suit. Oh yeah, let's get some raid messages going out here. Thank you, Rage. If you are a subscriber, at least something is holding you. Bobs, I will volunteer to hug you instead of the cold, harsh hug of money. Oh, and real quick, hold on, we'll get the raid messages out. We're gonna run out of time here. I have a new prop. I haven't decided how we're gonna use it yet, but I'll show you guys this. It's Money Monday, bitches! Have yourself a wonderful fucking evening. That was so much fun. We're gonna do that again sometime. Okay. Thank you all. I'm gonna put my end screen on. We're gonna go raid Mimo. Pop off with the with the raid love if you can. And I will see you all on Wednesday for my gaming streams, and I'll see you back next month for the next edition of this. Thank you all. Love you.